Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, today let's talk about the new mink transformation called Ceylon, and something that it is very similar to. But first, this topic requires me to re-bring up something that I mentioned recently in my video about the moons. In the world of One Piece, everything emits a kind of energy or wavelength. Zoro describes this energy as an object's breath. We see Smoker tell us that what makes Sea Stone sap Devil Fruit abilities is that it mimics the energy or the wavelength of the sea. So Smoker basically says that you can consider it another form of the sea. And so just as everything has this energy, so too does the moon. But this is really interesting though, which is that it seems as though the various stages of the moon cycle, crescent moon or full moon, or the gibbous moon, all emit different kinds of energy, different wavelengths, that perhaps respond to different people or groups of people differently. This is an interesting fact that I learned a while ago by reading the One Piece wiki, but in the earlier chapters of One Piece, you could actually follow the cycle of the moon throughout the story, and on two separate occasions, the moon's phase that it was in, crescent moon and full moon, was specifically mentioned in the early chapters as chapter titles. And in fact, in one instance, in chapter 152, which was titled Full Moon, it's not really clear why that chapter was titled Full Moon, other than the fact that it was emphasized in that chapter. So to me, it seems pretty clear that the moon and its cycles are important in some respects to the grander story. Captain Kuro specifically referred to the fact that the crescent moon made him very bloodthirsty. Or I guess in the translation I'm reading, it excites every cell in his body. Scientifically speaking, all energy falls within various different wavelengths. Light itself is measured by its wavelength, which actually relates to its color. And the color or wavelength of light relates to its level of energy. The only reason that we see things is because it absorbs, reflects, and refracts light differently. Perhaps this relates to the energy or wavelength of all things. And I think that the comparisons made here are even more clear when talking about the moon, because essentially what the moon is a giant ball in the sky that emits light, or technically reflects light. But it's a giant ball of light in the sky. So I probably just did a very terrible job explaining this, but the whole purpose is to sort of correlate what we know as the energy of the sea with a different kind of energy, the energy from the moon. And now let's relate this to devil fruits. So how exactly do devil fruits work? Somebody eats the devil fruit, and by one way or another, the properties of their bodies themselves change. So if each thing has a kind of energy, perhaps these devil fruits, and again, in one way or another, it's not really clear or important how, changes the wavelength of the person. So if rubber has its own wavelength, then by eating the Gomu Gomu no Mi, Luffy's wavelength becomes more similar to that of rubber, thus changing the properties of his body. This makes something that Chopper said very, very interesting. And so I was having a conversation with Twin Kid about a month ago, and he reminded me of this panel and its significance. But Chopper created the Rumble Ball, and the Rumble Ball allows Chopper to better control his Devil Fruit abilities. In fact, allowed him to obtain new specific zone transformations. Here's what Chopper had to say about it. My Rumble Ball is a drug that specifically alters the wavelengths emitted by each form. And again, due to this Rumble Ball, after 5 years of research, I've discovered 4 additional transformations. And so let's talk a moment about chemistry, and let's talk about the elements. Why do all the elements exist? And how do we make new elements? How do elements come together to form new compounds? It would take a lot of time and be very dry for me to go about trying to explain this properly. Maybe somebody else can do this at another time. But essentially you need stuff, you need atoms, you need raw material, and you need energy. Energy again relating to wavelengths. But the things that are typically considered to be actual elements or actual things are in a stable state. They can exist for more than just a moment. There's many other things that can be possibly created using energy and stuff, but as soon as they form, they disappear. They go back into the stuff that they originally were. So I think that this in some parts may relate to what Chopper is doing with his devil fruit. He alters the energy level of his forms, but only certain forms are stable. Thus would explain why he was able to discover by changing the energy level 4 new forms, and not an infinite number of new forms. And this also might have some relation to the mink's transformation of the Ceylon. Essentially, the energy provided by the full moon allows the minks to change their body or create a new stable state of existing. As long as they have a constant input of energy, again energy from the full moon, they can maintain this state. This would make the full moon for the minks very similar to the rumble ball. Essentially, the wavelength or the energy of the moon is a drug. A drug which changes the wavelength of their form. But anyway guys, I'm not saying that this is any definitive answer for what is going on, but I do think that it makes a ton of sense to me. But given this, it's very possible for the moon to have various effects on different races of people. Going back to Kuro and the crescent moon, the energy of the crescent moon is enough to excite every cell in his body and perhaps not change his appearance, but enhance his bloodlust, maybe even improve his strength. It's unclear, but possible. I also think that it's additionally possible that just like Chopper's Rumble Ball, that there could be some chemistry or science in creating a pill which mimics the energy of the full moon. Giving this drug to a mink might allow them to transform when it is not a full moon. And speaking of drugs and transformations, if these other various races can also achieve a form of transformation given the correct input of energy, I believe that other races could also transform. But it may be impossible to do this naturally. The minks obviously have a huge benefit in the fact that the energy source which fuels their transformations occurs naturally. The full moon exists on certain days, and when the full moon is out, they can transform. But if other races do have transformations, it seems most likely that whatever would create this wouldn't just happen, once a month. But theoretically, using science and technology in a lab, the other races could have other forms that can be achieved. Let's talk about the national treasure of Fishman Island. Revujo brought to my attention a comment that he read the top comment on Manga Stream for this last chapter by a user named Monswine. Monswine noticed something really interesting, which is that the transformation of the minks, the Ceylon, is oddly reminiscent to the transformation that we saw the fishmen undergo when they consumed the pills located within the national treasure of Fishman Island. Carrot's hair turned white, her eyes turned red, which is precisely how we see Hody Jones in Fishman Island, after he consumed a bunch of these pills. In fact, looking at it even further, it seems as though Carrot almost ages when she transforms, which is precisely what occurs to the fishman by eating this pill. If this is a coincidence, this is one hell of a coincidence. And I really want to ask this question. Does the pill within the national treasure of Fishman Island allow the fishmen to achieve their own version of the Ceylon form? If we've determined that it's the energy provided by the full moon which allows the minks to transform, and that just like in Chopper's Rumble Ball, there may be some chemistry or science which may be able to encapsulate this energy to potentially artificially create the Ceylon form, then I do think that it is very possible that the Ceylon and what we saw with the fishman is related, albeit unnatural in the fishman's case. Now, some of you might bring up the fact that Hody Jones and the rest of his crew seem to continuously age, whereas it seems as though Carrot ages temporarily, but as soon as the full moon goes away, then she would revert back to her normal state. And so my rationale for this is that, first of all, these are pills, and it's possible that there is some imperfections in the drug. Possibly once the drug is consumed, the process cannot be reversed. Whereas in the mink's case, as soon as the full moon leaves, then the process is reversed. It's additionally possible that this relates back towards training, where it's told in this last chapter that Carrot has been specifically trained in the Ceylon form, even going to Chopper in his Rumble Ball, which is also another unnatural kind of transformation. It took a long time for Chopper to perfect this. Hody Jones just happened to stumble upon this national treasure. It seems very reasonable that they never figured out how to properly use them. Perhaps just like the Rumble Ball, it requires some practice and training. Others might mention how Hody Jones actually consumed several of the pills without transforming. His hair didn't turn white initially, his eyes didn't stay red initially. And so my argument for this will lead into my final point of this video. It took many doses of this pill for Hody Jones to transform. Let's speculate that this pill contains the energy of the crescent moon. We'll just say for example's sake. Perhaps when the crescent moon is out, you get a full dose of it. But in these pills which mimic its energy, it's a lot smaller. So in the case of the full moon with the minks, the full moon provides enough full moon energy in order for the minks to transform. But maybe these pills don't provide quite enough and you need to overdose to reach this transformation. But even before this transformation, each individual pill does in fact provide a strength boost, which is probably its intended purpose. It honestly reminds me a lot of, again, Captain Kuro. Captain Kuro's whose energy and cells were excited by the crescent moon, potentially even made him stronger. Maybe you can equate the fishman consuming one pill to the advantages that Kuro gains from the crescent moon. But if there is some interaction between the crescent moon and Kuro, who is a human, this begs the question, can the humans, given enough energy, given the correct wavelength at the correct amount, can they also transform? Do humans also have the potential to unnaturally transform into a Ceylon? Or into something similar that would mimic what the minks call the Ceylon? Guys, I know that this is really out there, and a lot of people are going to look at this as some craziness. But what is going on with the minks, to start off with, is a bit of craziness. And when you're talking about the fishmen who've eaten the national treasure, what would make somebody's eyes turn red in the first place? What kind of pill would just make you stronger? There may be no explanation, there may be an explanation. If there is, this is the best as I can see it. There's hints that the minks may become more feral if they transform into a Ceylon without proper training. The anger then of an untrained Ceylon could be reminiscent of Kuro's bloodlust as a human and the fishman's bloodlust after consuming the national treasure. There's things here that are incredibly intriguing. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.